In 1974, something happened on the Blazing Saddles set that nobody talks about. The actor playing the Waco Kid disappeared after one day. What he did 4 years later still haunts Hollywood. John Wayne read the script and said 3 words that changed everything. The original title had a connection to Malcolm X that Warner Brothers buried. And there's a hidden message in the governor's name that only French historians understand. These aren't just movie trivia. These are secrets they tried to keep buried for 50 years. Blazing Saddles began with a wild idea. It was originally called Tex-X, a direct nod to Malcolm X. The man behind it, Andrew Bergman, was in his 20s and wanted to make a story about a black sheriff in an all-white western town. That idea alone was explosive. Naming the sheriff after Malcolm X wasn't just a joke. It was a statement. He wanted to rip apart the clean, whitewashed myth of Hollywood cowboys. A black man in charge of the Old West. That flipped the whole genre upside down. Even more shocking was the fact that a major studio looked at this script seriously in the early 1970s. Films didn't deal with race like that back then, especially not through comedy. The name Tex was dropped, but that fire stayed in the final version of Blazing Saddles. Before Mel Brooks showed up, the film almost went in a completely different direction. Alan Arkin was set to direct and the sheriff, James Earl Jones. This was long before he became the voice of Darth Vader. Jones had power and depth, but not a background in comedy. Still, he was a strong choice. But the project collapsed. Creative clashes, nervous executives, and the blunt force of the script scared everyone. It was too bold, too dangerous. So, it sat on a shelf. Only when Mel Brooks came in did the story come back to life. He didn't water it down. He pushed it even further. Without that earlier failure, Blazing Saddles wouldn't exist as we know it. Mel Brooks wasn't doing well when he took the job. The producers had won him an Oscar, but it didn't make much money. His next film, The 12 Chairs, flopped hard. He was broke. He couldn't even buy a new car, and he had a baby on the way with and bankrupt. He was ready to give up and return to TV. When he got offered Tex-X, he didn't take it because he believed in himself. He took it because he was desperate. Later, Brooks admitted this film saved him. It let him buy a house, afford a decent dinner, and finally breathe again. Blazing Saddles turned his whole life around. Writing the script was pure chaos. Brooks didn't work alone. He brought in 4 more writers: Andrew Bergman, Richard Pryor, Norman Steinberg, and Alan Ewer. The writing room was like a bar fight. Everyone yelled, argued, and fought for their jokes to survive. Sessions went deep into the night. They lived on Chinese takeout and adrenaline. The first draft was 412 pages long. That's enough for nearly 8 hours of film. They trimmed it down to 275 pages. Still way too long, but packed with wild, rule-breaking humor. Pryor brought his sharp edge to the script, especially with the character nobody could even remember who wrote what. The fart scene around the campfire that came out of this madness. This wasn't writing. It was war. And the result was something Hollywood had never seen before. From the start, Brooks set the tone with a sign on the wall. It read, "Please do not write a polite script." That sign shaped everything. He told his team to throw all rules out. Nothing was off limits. His thinking was simple. They probably won't make it anyway, so let's go wild. And they did. They attacked racism, mocked Hollywood cliches, and dared to joke about things no one else would touch. Pryor wrote Jewish jokes. The Jewish writers wrote black jokes. Nobody stayed in a lane. This mix gave the film its fearless voice. It didn't just make fun of westerns. It tore them apart and built something new from the wreckage. Richard Pryor was supposed to be the star. He was Brooks's top choice for Sheriff Bart, but Warner Brothers refused. They said Pryor's drug issues and recent jail time made him uninsurable. Brooks was furious. He thought about walking away, but Pryor, surprisingly calm, told him not to. He said, "We'll find the right guy. Keep going." Pryor didn't disappear, though. He joined the writing team and shaped the film's tone from behind the scenes. Cleveland Little got the lead role. Brooks later said they got lucky with Little, but you can't help wondering what Pryor's performance would have looked like, especially since he and Gene Wilder became a legendary comedy duo just 2 years later. And then came the biggest surprise of all. Mel Brooks wanted John Wayne to play the Waco Kid. That's right, the John Wayne. He was still one of the biggest stars in the world. Brooks gave him the script. Wayne read it overnight and said he laughed his ass off, but he turned it down. He said it was too dirty for his image. He promised he'd be first in line to see it though. Just imagine it. The straightest, most serious cowboy of all time, playing a drunken wreck in a film that mocks his entire genre. It didn't happen, but it almost did. After Wayne said no, Brooks got obsessed with casting Dan Daly. Daly wasn't a Western guy. He was known for musicals, but he could ride a horse better than almost anyone. Brooks thought he'd be perfect. He even tracked him down in Hawaii. Daly loved the script, but turned it down too. His eyes were failing. He said he was almost blind and couldn't safely ride anymore. Brooks was crushed. He kept chasing the perfect actor, but fate had other plans. Then came the worst casting disaster of all. Brooks hired Gig Young. Young had won an Oscar and had the weary look Brooks wanted. But Young had a serious alcohol problem. On the first day of filming, during the jail cell scene, he started shaking. Brooks thought he was acting until green bile came out of his mouth. He was rushed to the hospital. Brooks said later, "If you want an alcoholic, don't cast an alcoholic." Young never came back. He later sued Warner Brothers. The film had lost its Waco Kid again. That's when Gene Wilder stepped in. Brooks hadn't considered him for the Waco Kid. He thought Wilder was too young, too fresh. He'd offered Wilder the villain role earlier, but Wilder said no. Now desperate, Brooks called him crying. Wilder had just finished working with Brooks on The Producers. He got on a plane and flew straight to L.A. When he tried on the costume, it fit like magic. That Monday, he was already on set. His quiet charm and offbeat timing turned the Waco Kid into something unforgettable. And his chemistry with Cleon Little became the soul of the film. Out of all the chaos, that last-minute casting saved everything. When Mel Brooks first screened Blazing Saddles for the top brass at Warner Brothers, it was a disaster. The room was silent. Not one executive cracked a smile. The film was packed with fart jokes, a horse-punching scene, and the N-word used without hesitation. Instead of laughter, there was discomfort, then outrage. Leo Greenfield, the studio's head of domestic distribution, flat out said they should bury the film and take the financial hit. Others agreed. They didn't just dislike the movie, they wanted it gone. They handed Brooks a long list of cuts. Take out the campfire scene. Delete the violence. Remove the slurs. Brooks listened politely, took the list, left the room, and then crumpled it into a ball and threw it away. He wasn't changing a thing. Brooks knew he had one shot left. He quickly arranged a second screening, not for the suits, but for the workers, the secretaries, janitors, and mailroom guys. And this time, the room exploded. From the first joke, people were laughing uncontrollably. They were gasping for air, some even falling out of their chairs. It was pure chaos in the best way. One of the co-writers, Norman Steinberg, remembered the moment vividly. He said people were literally rolling on the floor. And Brooks, watching it all unfold, said what he really felt. "Fom, this is our film." That night, the studio executives saw something they couldn't ignore. Regular people, real audiences loved it. And that's what saved the movie from getting buried. Even after that wild response, the studio was still nervous. They didn't want to risk a nationwide release, so they played it safe. Blazing Saddles would open in just 3 cities, New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. That's it. No advertising, no critic previews, no buzz, just cold releases to see what happened. These cities were chosen because they were more likely to get the humor, especially the Jewish Catskill-style comedy that Brooks specialized in. The studio hoped for modest numbers, maybe enough to save face. What they got instead were packed theaters, people screaming with laughter, and word of mouth that spread like wildfire. The gamble had flipped, and the fire was just getting started. Critics didn't know what to make of it. Some loved it. Others called it vulgar and offensive. But none of that mattered. Audiences kept showing up. By spring of 1974, the film was playing in cities and small towns alike. Suburban theaters, where the studio had expected silence, were suddenly selling out. People didn't just watch Blazing Saddles. They quoted it, debated it, argued over it. Lines wrapped around the block. Families and friends made nights of it. What started as a niche comedy was now a nationwide sensation. Even the worst reviews had to admit. The crowd was howling. The film had broken through every barrier and done it with scenes no one thought would ever make it past the censors. And then came the money. The budget was just $2.66 million. But the final North American gross $119.6 million. That made it the #1 film of 1974. An estimated 63 million people saw it in theaters. That's more than any Lord of the Rings film managed decades later. Adjusted for inflation, Blazing Saddles made nearly $600 million. It wasn't just a success, it was a phenomenon. Mel Brooks had trusted his gut, ignored the executives, and made exactly the movie he wanted to make. And it worked. The film didn't just survive. It rewrote the rules of what comedy could be. Even the smallest details in Blazing Saddles were layered with meaning. Take the governor's name, William J. Leiteman. It sounds like nonsense, but it's actually a reference to a real French performer named Joseph Puel. Born in 1857, Pujo was a global star known as El Toman, which means the fart maniac. That wasn't just a stage name. It was his act. He could inhale air or even water into his rectum and release it at will, in tune, on cue, in rhythm. He played songs, blew out candles, did impressions. He could even smoke a cigarette using only his backside. Puel was so popular, nurses had to be stationed at his shows to carry out people who fainted from laughing too hard. Once someone allegedly died laughing, and he earned more than the most famous actress in France. When Brooks named the governor after him, it wasn't just for laughs. It was a tribute to a legend of bodily comedy who had once ruled the Moulin Rouge. And Brooks didn't stop there. He didn't just play the governor. He also played a Native American chief who spoke fluent Yiddish. In one of the film's most outrageous scenes, the chief lets a wagon of black settlers pass unharmed, then cracks a joke that turns every Hollywood Western cliché upside down. He says in Yiddish, "Don't be crazy. Let him go as long as you're healthy." And adds, "They darker than us." It was absurd. It was offensive. And it was deliberate. In the old days, native roles were often played by Jewish actors. Brooks flipped the script and made a joke so layered that only people familiar.
Then there's a moment that seems completely impossible. About 20 minutes into the movie, in the middle of a dusty desert set in 1874, Count Basie and his full jazz orchestra suddenly appear. They're dressed in sharp tuxedos playing April in Paris like it's a concert hall, not the Wild West. But here's the strange part. Jazz didn't even exist in 1874. Not even close. Ragtime, which came before jazz, wouldn't show up for another 20 years. Yet, there they are performing right in the open desert like it's the most normal thing in the world. The scene is jarring, hilarious, and completely out of place. And that's the point. Director Mel Brooks wasn't trying to be historically accurate. He wanted to shock the audience and break the rules. This wasn't just a short musical gag. It lasted several minutes and totally interrupted the Western storyline, but instead of ruining the mood, it somehow made it better. The moment became one of the most iconic scenes in the film, showing Brooks' love for absurd humor and his habit of flipping movie traditions upside down. The song Basie played wasn't just any version either. It was his legendary 1955 arrangement of April in Paris. That version had bold brass, smooth swing, and Basie's classic piano rhythm. He first recorded it in 1955, and it became a signature part of his live shows. One of the most famous performances happened at the 1956 Newport Jazz Festival, which is still considered a major moment in jazz history. By using that exact version, Brooks added another layer of meaning. He didn't just want a random jazz tune. He chose something rich in history. It was a tribute to Basie's legacy and a way to blend real-life music history with comedy. What made the scene even more surreal was that Basie didn't play a character. He played himself. A real jazz legend just popped into the middle of a fake 19th century Western. That choice made everything feel even more strange and brilliant. Basie's calm and cool attitude stood in contrast to the wild setting.